Welcome to Manufacturing the Workforce of Tomorrow, a new minicast brought to you by SME. I'm your host, Toni Neary, Director of Community Engagement and Workforce Innovation. In this minicast, we're going to dive deep into workforce development, exploring challenges, opportunities, and solutions that are shaping the future of manufacturing. Each month, I'll bring you insightful interviews with key industry leaders, sharing success stories, highlighting significant events, and providing valuable resources to help you stay ahead of the curve. Whether you're a seasoned manufacturing professional or just starting your journey, Manufacturing the Workforce of Tomorrow is your go-to source for the latest news and trends in workforce development. So join me every month as we work together to build a stronger, more resilient manufacturing workforce. Let's get started.
On today's episode, we are tapping into some internal SME talent. I have Dr. Timothy Wilson with us today. Tim is a strategist in AI and machine learning, and with over 8 years experience spanning retail forecasting, quantitative trading, predictive analytics, and computer vision, half of which I don't even think I can pronounce, let alone do. Tim is here on our team and is leading up our technology innovation and strategy. And I would say he's my AI go-to for any questions that I have tech. So Tim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Toni, for having me. Excited to be here.
And I think this is intriguing. It's so funny because I was actually on a stage talking about AI last month. And it's one of those things for me that I know enough about it to probably be dangerous. So will you take us back to like an AI 101? AI is obviously artificial intelligence, but I know that you've mentioned there's like different types of AI. So can we just start in the basics on like, what are the different types of AI that are out there?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, and walking back it's funny because, AI feels like it's such a new phenomenon, right? It's everywhere we go now, but it's really been around like since the 1950s, back when the question was, can machines think? And that's where we started from. And now we have this resurgence that allows us to understand and train machines to think because we have big data and cloud computing and all these terms you're going to hear like neural networks and generative AI and all these opportunities now to kind of start to train machines to think. And when it comes down to AI, I think there's a lot of different ways to think about it, and some people will classify it in different components, and we're even figuring how to, classify it within SME of what we're going to do. But probably what's the simplest to understand is what's called one is narrow AI. And think of narrow AI as AI doing something really well at one thing. You probably see that like for Amazon recommendations. You go on Amazon, it recommends you buy this because you bought that, right? Or Spotify playlists. They're very good at kind of like doing one piece of the puzzle. So, you could think of it like a pocket knife. It's focused, it's efficient, it has its one little tool and you switch to another tool. And what we're moving towards is a little more what's called like general AI. And this is probably the more human-like experience, the reasoning piece that's coming in some of these new AI solutions that starts to understand or think a little bit more like a human. And we're not there yet, but we're starting to see a little more progress towards that. And then there's also the piece that's kind of, in between that's newer too, is what's called agentic AI. And just think of that as an AI system that is more proactive, that's behind the scenes doing work for you, even if you don't ask it to do it, right? So right now, like if you go into some of these AI, areas, you're interacting with it. You're asking AI, what would you do in this situation? Create me a strategy, be a mentor to me, how about a marketing plan, right? And it spits out this logic and patterns and gives you some kind of insight that, you may have not seen before. Well, the agentic AI is behind the scenes doing all that more proactively. And that's where we're starting to see AI go towards. But foundationally, underneath it all, it's what's called these large language models. And it's just taking a lot of information and synthesizing it, looking for patterns, and helping you to make next steps. I like to compare what often you'll hear these things called LLMs. That's the OpenAI, the ChatGPTs, the other models out there. And I like to compare it to think of it like a really efficient and smart librarian, right? Who's read all the books, in the library, And then when you ask her or him a question, they don't just give you facts, right? They look at the patterns between the books and then give you some kind of information or strategy patterns that emerge from that as part of it. And that's where we are right now, and allowing us to interact with these large language models that have spotted patterns across the whole internet and various documents and things of that nature. So I think there's the narrow piece of AI which is there, and where we're moving towards general AI. For us, there's also this what's AI driven and what's AI supported. And for us, it's thinking about, as an organization, or even any organization, how do you want to externally show your AI presence, whether that's through these, make sure you're doing an ethical and responsible frameworks, and how do you use AI, what's your strategy for using AI, and for us, it's the industry of manufacturing. How can we help to understand better ways to use AI, and once again, protect from any kind of biases and privacy aspects. But also there's the internal, the AI supported, like what can we do to help our employees, our organization, to be more efficient and to use AI and to learn the skills that are associated with it. And I see that's where I think some organizations are going, both kind of that external piece of how to drive change with AI, but also how to drive internal change as part of it.
And I think it's huge because there's a few things, like sometimes you're using AI and you don't even realize that you're using AI. Like I love to do audiobooks, and it's like, oh, you enjoyed this, you might enjoy this. It's like, that's AI.
Yep.
And it's trying to say, well, Toni, based on the patterns of the books that you've read and the ratings that you've given them, here's some other titles that you might enjoy. And I have to be honest, I've actually read a lot of, or listened to a lot of books that way, based on like, oh yeah, that really is like a genre that I liked, or I enjoyed the theme of that book, or the voice, or the character. So I think there's ways we're using AI daily right now that we probably don't even realize we're doing it.
100% right. Like I said, AI has been around for a while in various capacities, and a while, and I say a while in like the years that we have now in the AI world, right? Like
Right.
even though I've been around AI for 8 years, sometimes it feels like an eternity. Like it has gone so fast with stuff. And yeah, so whether you're talking to the Alexas of the world or Siris, if you get a fraud alert from banking, they're using AI. If you're applying for a job, right, your resume is going through AI. If you're using a GPS, you're using AI. You are using AI in any kind of, I mean, not any kind, but most experiences through a day in some aspects. And I think what's happening now is this AI explosion is happening in a way that it's becoming much more accessible, right? To people without realizing it, and so now they can use it in various capacities they didn't think about before, and have a dialogue and interaction where maybe they didn't realize with Alexa that, you could do some of that, right? So yeah, so I think it's been around for a while, and it's just kind of exploding in terms of now it's accessible to all some forms.
So based on the fact that we're both on the workforce team and we're looking at workforce solutions, let's talk a little bit about some of the ways that AI can help address the skills gap for employers, retention for both employers as well as education, because I think that's really where we're starting to see some of our testing and development and research really take off.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think AI can definitely be used in various capacities. Let's talk about just the retention side of things. We're seeing AI being used to unpack a lot of internal organizations' workforce data. So how do you spot people that may have skills that would align to another job within your organization, right? And understand that skill gap and what they need to train towards, and then provide personalized like learning and pathways, career pathways or learning pathways, right? In a short time to get them trained for that position. So I'm seeing that definitely with AI, is understanding what's already happening with an organization and creating a workforce plan as a result of that. right? Then there's also just the opportunities that, AI provides to giving people directions in terms of their career paths, right? Based upon various components, as we know, AI just looks at a lot of data. It can look at your education, it can look at your interests, it can look at some of your behaviors, and then start to provide those recommendations of where to go in terms of your career path. And also, how do you like to learn? There's a lot of, AI systems out there that look at learning patterns. Maybe you're an audio and visual person. You like to see videos in terms of learning, and, someone talking on a podcast, right? And you learn from that. Maybe you are that more the reader based, or you maybe want to get your hands dirty and build. And so there's various aspects that come with AI in terms of the learning experience and the training piece, the AI tutors, AI mentors, AI career coaches, right? All kind of personalized. I think at the end of the day, I think the word personalization, though it's somewhat starting to become overused, is the nail on the head, right? I think people are going to start to expect a personalized experience, whether that's in shopping or in workforce development. And how do we as an organization, how do we in manufacturing, leverage that, right? And help in that personalized piece of things.
And I think the interesting part there is the fact that you could use these tools to find out that maybe you've got an electrical engineer sitting in your QA department because that's where they got their seat on the bus to get into your company. So you may have untapped talent within the walls of your organization where people are looking for upward mobility. They're looking for growth within your organization, and you can provide those opportunities because you actually understand what their skill set is and the small or tiny gaps that they may need to move from one position or one department to another. And I think that's really powerful.
I completely agree. And we've seen organizations like that. I think it was, the Bosch company in Germany did this for like 10,000 workers. They looked at all their skills and tried to find ways to kind of create this long-term pathway for them. And then, of course, to upskill, reskill them in a very short time period to fill those, and it helps, right? Because it takes a long time to onboard a new employee to get them familiar with the culture and the job, right? And you hope that they stay around, so this really does, help companies, to your point, identify, individuals and that would be a good fit for these jobs. I've seen some companies even do like these kind of like gig opportunities, right? They use AI and say, look, Toni's got a background in she likes public speaking. She would be great over in the communications department. Let's align 15 to 20% of her time to do some projects with communication, right? And see if she likes it and see if she's a potential fit for that, down the road. And so I think there's really creative ways that companies can use AI to identify, match, and promote, talent.
And I think when we're looking at long-term investment in employees, it's a much lower cost than trying to retrain and onboard somebody. But you can also find this hidden talent with individuals within your organization that is like, wait a minute, I didn't know that she enjoyed doing that. That would be a great, that would take a burden off of our team who doesn't enjoy doing that part of their job. I think one of the other exciting things when we look at growth and tapping into potentially untapped talent pipelines is language barriers. Can you talk a little bit about some of the tools that we're using and deploying and how those can help English language learners or people that are trying to enter the workforce or, move within an organization that maybe are not primary English language speakers?
Oh yeah. So what's great with AI, once again, the backbones to it, like the foundation of these large language models is they look at language and language broadly, any kind of context, any kind of data you put in that can be numerical or non-numerical, and it comes up with patterns. So it's doing the same thing with language, right? And it's able to translate language, very almost instantaneously in most areas. And whether it's you have those systems like you embed into like a Zoom call or a Teams call like Otter AI and things like that. It can take notes, but also can translate it into, another language and get it, 90 to 95% correctly is pretty amazing, right? And we're seeing this in a lot of learning management systems too, where they can instantly create, subcontext for different languages or audio in different languages allows allows the opportunity for training and development to happen, instantaneously. And I think it's really, really exciting. We see this. Google Translate's been around for a while, right? Like we talked
Mhm.
about like how have we experienced AI? Well, Google Translate has an AI background to it, right? Now we've just been able to take Google Translate and to make it much more robust and more precise. And I think that's those areas that it will continue to help us to develop with those second language learners. And like I said, it personalizes it as well. What's interesting too is not only can AI help with the multilingual piece, but it can do multi-audience. So think about it's not just I want to translate it from English to Spanish, but maybe there's a subpopulation in Spanish speakers that you want to address in a different kind of tone, right? So now you're able to say, I want to do multilingual Spanish speakers in a more 10th to 12th grade tone as compared to a more of adult learner. Once again, it goes back to that personalization side that I think is really, really fascinating with the opportunities with AI.
Absolutely amazing. Anything else that you think can help organizations jumpstart on if they're not integrating AI to help with some of their workforce solutions?
And that's a great question. I think any organization, as they start to think about using AI within their organization, is kind of start with what do we want our relationship with AI to be, right? Because AI can mean a lot of things, right? There's some companies, I don't know if just an announcement recently, like Shopify said every one of their employees, anyone they hire, needs to have AI experience, right? So there's some
Wow.
companies that are saying we are going to be AI first. Okay, so that's where some of the tech companies are coming. Then there's other companies that we're not even going to step foot into the world of AI, right? It's scary, it's unknown, it's some would even say dangerous. And we know it's, there's pendulums to this. But I think to start any kind of company is to say, look, what is our relationship going to be AI to be? And to think like for us, I would say this is augmenting human intelligence. We're just really trying to help our workers to be more informed, to make efficient decisions, to operationalize and be efficient. And then from that strategy of what our relationship's going to be, what do you want your employees to do with AI and what do you want them to learn, right? It's empowering them in the process. It was interesting. I think I read a study where it was, 80% of companies were talking about investing and using generative AI, within the next 2 to 5 years, but only like 25% of the companies were providing training on it. And that
Wow.
to me, that's that gap where it's like, once again, it's, as an organization, if you were going to, put this and say, this is our relationship, we're going to be integrating AI into our workforce, then we need to have a training and skills, component to it. And I think that's what we're trying to do is how do you build those together in the process? So that's what that's one area that I would start with any organization is thinking about that relationship, making sure it ties to the business strategy of the organization. If you're bringing it in, AI just for AI's sake doesn't usually turn out well,
Yeah.
right? And I would say two things is not just the aspect of developing the skills and the training part of it, but develop a sense of trust in the organization, right? Everyone has a different view of AI. It's very, very interesting. It's almost like a political debate in some forms, right?
Yeah.
And so going and understanding that every person within your organization, whether it's technical or non-technical, has a perspective that could be leverage your AI solutions. And what I mean is often we go to the technical people and say, build this model, build this solution, go at it, employee, right? But when it comes to the usage of it, we want to make sure that everyone understands what that means and what they contribute to it. AI is only good as a domain or the subject area that it's addressing. And people have that context, employees have that context, departments have that context. And the only way to develop a sense of trust is when you have more buy-in, more ownership, more voice into it, right? And then from that, understand like what's the transparency behind it. As you build these models, talking about like just generally how you go about doing it. How do you eliminate biases and things of that nature so everyone feels a little more at ease when it comes to understanding the usage of AI. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And you have such a knack for taking extremely complex topics and making them very simple. And I appreciate that because it's can all be a little overwhelming as we're looking at technology is moving faster than we are now. And I think it can be very overwhelming if you're like, wait, I don't even know where to start. How do we apply it? What does it look like? So I love this conversation. I think you've probably simplified the process for a lot of people more than just me.
Well, I hope so. It is complicated, right? And what's interesting enough is the whole purpose of AI is the goal of AI is to make things simple, right? Simple patterns, and that you can make simple decisions based upon complicated information, right? And I think sometimes we do make it too complicated. I've always, like in the companies I've worked with or coached with, like go slow to go fast, right? Like
Mhm.
slow down and figure out what do you want to do with this? Who's going to be part of that decision making process? How are you going to get buy-in, right? And and then go from there. And hopefully we will. It's hard to because everything is telling you, to your point, rush, rush, go fast. And I say, no, slow down, think about it, come up with a decision, and you won't get left behind if you have a good structure. And I think if you have a good buy-in from everyone in your company.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Tim. We're so fortunate to have you here on the team with us, leading all of our strategy around all of this amazing and very cool tech.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be, here with SME and working with you and everyone else.
That's a wrap for this episode of Manufacturing the Workforce of Tomorrow. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform to stay updated on all the latest trends and happenings in workforce development. Don't forget to visit our website at sme.org for more resources and information. Until next time, let's continue to build a stronger, more resilient manufacturing workforce together.